Right now, Governor DeWine signing the state's two-year $60 billion budget. It is the talk tonight, and it's coming with a record number of line item vetoes.
We have team coverage of all of this tonight. Tom Bosco live at the Statehouse right now with what the governor is rejecting. But we will start first with Kate Seifert on your side with what made it across the finish line.
Governor Mike DeWine says this $60 billion budget supports children and families. It strengthens our workforce and makes important investments in our communities. Among that list, there are two major headlines getting a lot of attention in this budget. That includes tax cuts for some Ohioans and significant funding for a new Cleveland Browns stadium. Let's start with the tax cuts. In this budget is a 2.75% flat income tax, meaning people who make more than $100,000 a year will no longer have to pay 3.5% in income tax, making them equal to the lower tax bracket. State data reveals this could result in a loss of more than $1 billion in general fund revenue. Here's why Governor Mike DeWine says he approved this part of the budget, despite what that state data shows.
The answer is I can count. I can count votes in the General Assembly.
Meaning he knows lawmakers would likely override his veto if he cut the flat tax from the budget. Also approved $600 million for a new football stadium for the Cleveland Browns. That money does not rely on the general fund, but will come from the state's unclaimed funds. So things like forgotten utility deposits, refunds that were never claimed, and old bank accounts that were abandoned by Ohioans. But DeWine says it's not just all about the Browns. There was other criteria for that budget item, including benefits for other stadiums across the state.
My criteria is it had to be holistic, it had to be universal, but it also would not spend money out of the general fund that directly competes with education, directly competes with mental health. Stadiums should not compete with mental health. Stadiums should not compete with education. And so this budget, while it didn't do it the way I originally designed it, does that. And that was those two things were my first priorities.
In addition to those headlines, DeWine says this budget also prioritizes children, education and literacy, mental health services, public safety, and the state's natural resources through investments in H2 Ohio. On your side of the Statehouse, I'm Kate Seifert, ABC 6 News.
Governor DeWine also took issue with some of the major priorities passed by the General Assembly.
Among the 67 items removed were property tax relief measures, a mandate requiring LGBTQ-related materials out of public view, and restricting food stamps from being used to purchase sugary beverages like soda. Tom Bosco continues our team coverage live at the Statehouse tonight.
Jessica and Mike, this was a record for Governor DeWine, the most number of line item vetoes he has used on a budget during his term. It's a laundry list of programs and policies that he kicked out of the budget. This morning, he stood and explained his decisions.
Everybody has a turn to make a move. I made my move.
Those moves revealed late Monday night when the governor signed the two-year budget. He's got line item veto power, and he kicked 67 items out of the budget. Among them, the mandate that SNAP recipients not be able to use benefits to buy sugary drinks like soda. Not that he's opposed to the idea.
I support not using SNAP to purchase these beverages.
But the governor says he's already working on it. He vetoed lawmakers' efforts to kick 4-year-olds off Medicaid if their parents' financial circumstances change.
We should not change that. We know that children who receive consistent primary care are able to have the best start in life.
He vetoed efforts to make school board races partisan. Board members will continue to run without having to declare a party. And he vetoed an effort to cut funding to homeless shelters that promote or affirm gender transition.
We want homeless shelters to be open and for everyone. And that's kind of it.
He struck down efforts to force libraries to keep LGBTQ materials out of the hands of minors.
I thought that it was not workable. It goes to content, and it goes to material content within any kind of book. I just don't think it works very well.
But perhaps the biggest sigh of relief may be coming from Ohio's schools. The governor vetoed the budget provision that would provide tax rollbacks in school districts that carry over 40% of their budget year to year. The governor says he hears that homeowners are calling for property tax relief, but says what lawmakers were proposing was just too much.
Imposing them now, all of them at once, on our local schools would create a huge problem. I felt that this was not going to be good for our students. Ultimately, the only thing that matters is our students.
Yeah, Rodney and Jessica, the governor kept in the budget the $600 million for a new Browns stadium. He says by using unclaimed funds, it avoids using taxpayer money from the general fund, so he's pleased with that. He also kept the flat tax alive, so that's going to mean a tax cut for folks making a lot of money in the state. But it was a record for the governor. 67 line item vetoes, the most he's ever stricken from a state budget during his 2 terms in office. I asked the governor today a few questions trying to get inside his mind into his decision-making process on the vetoes.
Lawmakers gave him a 5,500-page budget. The governor signed it into law, but not before chopping 67 items out of it. Among them, cutting lawmakers' plan to repay taxpayers if school districts carry over 40% of their budget or more. Closing the book on plans to restrict libraries from letting those under 18 see LGBTQ-themed materials. Squashing a plan to force school board candidates to declare a party when they run for office, and cutting plans to defund homeless shelters for transgender youth. 67 cuts in all, more than the 44 vetoes 2 years ago. This is DeWine's last budget in his last term as governor, likely his last political office.
Did you feel freer since this is your last state budget, or was it more commentary on quality of the issues in the budget?
Oh, I'm probably not going to answer that. It's how it came out.
DeWine says he and his staff spent the weekend holed up going over the budget.
And just went through item by item. And, I'm calling balls and strikes. And it's just the way it came out. It's how the score ended up.
And the governor admits some items he knew he'd veto right from the get-go.
As these things pass, or as you see them, do you just immediately know, no, that's coming out?
Well, yeah, sometimes, yeah. Yeah, I mean, sometimes, look, you see that, oh, no, that's not going to work, It's literally balls and strikes on each pitch, every single one. That's how we do it. Look, doesn't mean we're right, but I'm the guy that happens to be the governor.
Now it'll be up to state lawmakers to decide whether to try and override the governor's veto.
Everybody has a turn to make a move. I made my move. My move was to veto things that I thought were not good for the state of Ohio. And the legislature now can do what they do.
So the governor delivering some relief for school districts when he vetoed those issues where lawmakers were trying to deliver property tax relief to homeowners. Our Mike McCarthy now live following the reaction from school leaders. Mike, what they have to say?
So, Tom, this debate over trying to lower property taxes and how that impacts schools is a financial fight I have updated you on for the last 5 months. And tonight, school treasurers are breathing a sigh of relief, but they know this may not be over just yet. Central Ohio school districts gave Governor Mike DeWine's budget vetoes a passing grade.
I am so appreciative of the governor taking a lead in this space and understanding how this would have harmed children had it gone through.
Nicole Marshall is the treasurer with Westerville City Schools. She was among the first we heard sound the financial alarm over plans to provide property tax relief by limiting how much money schools can save, along with other changes impacting school levies.
So a lot of the big provisions that we were really concerned about around property tax reform, he did veto all of those.
Governor DeWine says he understands how higher property taxes have made financial problems for Ohioans, especially those on fixed incomes. But he says the Republican plan passed in the legislature undermines schools trying to be financially responsible.
I felt that these ideas were thoughtful, but I was also concerned that imposing them now, all of them at once, on our local schools would create a huge problem.
Southwestern City Schools called his veto on the savings limit a critical decision, and Olentangy local schools told us the veto was in the best interest of its stakeholders. But the financial fight may not be done. State Rep David Thomas has been instrumental in creating the GOP's property tax reforms. Is there going to be an effort to try to override the governor's veto here in the legislature?
So that's what myself and many of my colleagues are pushing for. We have to do these reforms now to be effective to decrease tax bills for January of 2026. That has to be our priority. So however that works and however fast we can do it, that's what our goal is.
Are the governor and school districts wrong that this would be a huge problem for schools if this were to happen?
So I think there's actually a bigger problem for our taxpayers.
Governor DeWine agreed the issue must be addressed. He's pledged to create a working group, including lawmakers, schools, and more, to develop a different long-term solution. Treasurer Marshall encouraged those talks.
I hope that this isn't a partisan conversation about what school districts need in terms of resources in order to support kids.
A financial future yet to be graded, even with the state budget passed and now signed. Tonight, it is not clear how soon we might see an attempt to override the governor, but we know it would have to start in the Ohio House because that's where the budget bill began. House Speaker Matt Huffman said there is an eagerness among Republicans to consider veto overrides, particularly with property taxes. We'll be watching. Live on your side in the studio, Mike McCarthy, ABC 6 News.
Thanks for watching the ABC 6 News YouTube channel.
Bringing you breaking news, stories, sports, and original content throughout Central Ohio.
Make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss out.
ABC 6 News is on your side.